Hello everyone, and good morning or good evening good afternoon from wherever you are. Welcome to this webinar with Medic 52, and we're going to talk today about the recent announcement of the Winter Olympics in 2022 that has now been awarded to Beijing in China over Almaty. Today's guest is Gary Grant. Gary is a ski resort, I'm going to try and get this right, ski resort consultant. He helps resorts mainly in Asia and Australia get planning and execution right of everything that a ski resort does, all the way from grooming through to guest services and indeed ski patrol. And as a ski patroller himself, we thought it'd be an awesome idea to have Gary come along and have a conversation about what is going on in China at the moment in the ski industry and what it's like to actually be a ski patroller there as well. So a little bit of housekeeping. If you do get knocked off the call, please go back onto medic52.com/webinar and just reload that page, and you can come along and rejoin. And of course, you can view this on YouTube or through the Google Plus page without being signed into Google. If you want to ask a question, please comment below the video, or if you are in the Google Hangout system, please push the button and use the system on the right-hand side to ask that question. We'll field those questions as we go a little bit later on. All right, so the other item I just have to put out there is that the 2015 Medic 52 World Ski Patroller Survey is now available online. So you can go to medic52.com/survey, and that's now available to download. Lots of very, very interesting information there from the 600 odd respondents we had from the survey. So let's move on. Gary, are you there?
I am. Good morning.
Hey Gary. So Gary, would you like to just give us a bit of an intro about yourself and about what it is that you do? Probably a little bit better than I just did.
Oh, I think you did quite well. I quite liked it. Yeah, I've been patrolling for 35 years, so just that side of it. I started as a ski instructor, as a bit of a part-time job, and saw that patrolling seemed a much more interesting pastime, so got involved there. And that's it, both in Australia, Canada, Japan, and Korea. Most of it, of course, is in Australia. But I worked because I lived in Canada. I lived in Ottawa for a couple of years. I worked as a patroller in Quebec as a pay patroller over there, as a sort of part-time pay patroller for a period of time. Spent a lot of time skiing around the world, training patrollers, as I said, examining patrollers. In Perisher, I was both the captain for a while before moving to president, and I have sat on a number of the state and national bodies and set up a lot of their education systems. I love my snow sports so much, I ended up being involved and becoming in the ski resort industry, and for 12 years I was a general manager at Perisher, and that actually Perisher Blue at that time, and involved in looking after the marketing, the sales, the guest services, the hospitality, food and beverage, resort services, media, a whole range of different areas. Left that in 2010, and I'd become more involved in wider tourism and working with government bodies. And when I left Perisher, I did some consulting work, but was asked to come to China to have a look at some resort developments over there. And I found myself very quickly reviewing snow sports resorts mainly, but also other types of resorts, because the Chinese are very much becoming in tune with the fact that resorts need to be a full year-round destination and have a variety of activities. Skiing alone won't sustain them. As part of that, I got asked to have a look at the initial plans of Secret Garden, or Getting Secret Garden, which is one of the locations that have been chosen for the 2022 Olympic Games. At that time, it was just plans and a valley, and after some modifications of what we believe the plans could be, they started the development, and in its first, and Chinese do things very quickly, so we're literally talking, 1 year later, we have one five-star hotel operating, we have 4 lifts in, and we're underway completing our second hotel. And at that stage, I was reviewing the development, and the owner said, well, could you stay? I had no intentions of staying, but I actually then agreed I'd do it the first winter for him. So 2 winters and 2 summers later, I finally left. We got it to a stage where it was ready for the bid. It's got a way to go, but it's moving in that right direction. In the past 5 years, I've also completed a PhD in ski resort guest expectations and satisfactions and management strategies to increase revisitation, and that was based on studies here in Australia and has now been conducted in Canada, in Japan, and in China. So it's been an interesting journey for 35 years, but I would say the last 5 have been the most interesting, and has got me into places, into India, into China, into Mongolia, where snow sports is emerging as an activity, and it's quite exciting to be part of that at ground roots level. And having the Olympics is a bonus, a big bonus, and a major thing for the Chinese snow sports industry, and I believe for snow sports worldwide.
Absolutely. So there's been a bit of, I don't know, I'm going to say controversy about this 2022 bid with regards to the perhaps lack of choice between Almaty and Beijing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it became a choice. They had their 5 nominees, but then they slowly dropped out for various reasons. And a large part of that is costs. Running Olympic Games is not a cheap activity. It's a very expensive, whether it's summer or winter. And Norway was the last one to drop out, and they did it via referendum. And they're still, struggling after their last Winter Olympics, which was certainly a well-run event, but it costs a lot of money. With China, a lot of the infrastructure was planned to be in place regardless. We have the resort area, which is to be like a garden area for Beijing. As Beijing expands, it's a recreation zone which had been being developed. That was, we'll say, it's between 3 and 5 hours at the moment, depending on traffic, to get to this. So you get out of the Beijing smog, you get up into the mountains, where it's really beautiful and really clean. The Great Wall sort of skirts around it. You on top of the Mount Azeh, you look up north towards Mongolia. It's very green in summer, but very, very dry in winter. The controversies were, it mainly costs. It gave China an advantage because they're going to reuse a lot of their facilities from summer. The road network was in, the rail network was going in, the resorts were there. So that will help minimise the cost for this. Sochi certainly scared a lot of countries. It was a very expensive Olympics.
Right.
And they're going to be spending money for years to fix a lot of the problems that were created in Sochi, where that was constructed.
Yeah, so largely a financial thing, but I guess as well from the recent Summer Olympics that Beijing hosted, that's going to stand them in good stead.
Oh, certainly. Well, they did a good job, but there's controversy over water as well in China, and ski resorts require a lot of water, and especially in China where you rely on man-made snow to ensure that you have sufficient. Although that's becoming quite common in other countries as well. I think we're experiencing that here in Australia right at the moment. If not for snowmaking, we wouldn't be having the facilities we have right now. And we're seeing that in Europe, we're seeing that in North America. But in China, they're dependent upon the snowmaking. We received average about 80 centimetres of snow per year, natural. A good year would be 120, which we had. We also had a bad year, which was if we got 10 to 15, we were lucky.
Wow. And
snowmaking ensured that we continued. So with appropriate planning and proper facilities, we can get the snowmaking working very well and efficient. That's certainly been one of the comments that has been coming out in the media, that how can you run a Winter Olympics when you have to make snow? But it seems to be made by people who don't understand that Vancouver made snow, Sochi made snow, they all made snow for the games. So, and of course, man-made snow is you don't ski it downhill on natural snow.
Yes, that's what I've heard. They prefer the man-made snow because it's a little bit harder wearing and easier to get into.
Oh, and it's been well worked to be frozen solid,
Mm,
and it's what they're after.
yeah,
And that makes it fair for all competitors, but also gives the competition the edge that's required.
right. So the industry in China, I mean, it sounds like it's growing just as fast as everything else in China is at the moment. So is participation, similar to what you might find in the US or Canada, in that people become seasonal skiers and are back year in year out.
It's getting there, yes. Certainly, I had guests that when I first went there, I met them in the first year, and I met them each winter, and a number of them in summer as well. They come back with their mountain bikes, so we installed that. It's growing at a rapid rate for sure. For 1996, it was estimated to be only about 10,000 skiers in China, and that had grown in 2010 to, they believe, around about 5 million. And in the next 5 years, up until now, it's believed to be somewhere between 10 and 15 million. The expectation was it would reach 15 million by 2015. It wasn't growing at the rate they expected it to, and there's a whole range of reasons for that. That I think the Olympics will certainly push this on. But let's say they got 10 million. That's certainly a good start on numbers, and beats a lot of other locations. And for a country that's really just getting involved, it's been quite a rapid rate of increase. The difference with China, though, is for every one skier or boarder that you have on the mountain, you have probably 3 to 5 additional guests who accompany them to be part of the experience, but they don't actually get on the mountain because there's a safety aspect to it. It's new. They're concerned about a whole range of aspects of skiing that some of us now take for granted, but that's all part of setting up the proper safety systems, the proper training systems, ensuring there's appropriate and rental equipment, and it's all properly tuned and selected, and so on. So there's many things that China, when they started the resorts, a lot of them didn't do that. You had your exceptions. You had your certainly the ones that Enjoyce put in, for example, Yabali, and then the Italians with Dolomiti. That they set the groundwork for the expansions and the changes by putting Western and European methodologies in place. Unfortunately, they were not successful because they weren't planned appropriate for the market at the time. And so they're all undergoing rapid and rather large changes now in order for them to continue being good resorts.
Right. So they kind of started large and are now seeing how the market's behaving, and they have to sort of rebuild and reinvent as the perception and the participation changes.
Well, they certainly started large, but not as large as they're going to be, and not as large as some of the new ones. It was more the combination of runs that were put in. You've got a market that's emerging as the snow sports industry and has mainly first-timer and beginner, and a few intermediate and very few advanced. So you build a resort for advanced skiers. It didn't work. So what they're doing now is they're planning the resort so there's more of those beginner intermediate facilities, and much more than what we would see in the West. A few of them more advanced, but the ability to expand and to modify over time. And so Secret Garden is an example of that. It's a large area. It's not yet utilising all that area, but as it moves towards the Olympics, and that we're talking for them, it's only a 12-year journey or so to get there, where it'll go from a farming valley, to a major international resort, catering for 19,000 skiers on a day, accommodation for up to 30,000, and in a 100 square kilometre area. So they're not insignificant sizes in the resorts, but what was lacking was the appropriate planning to cater for the particular market they had, and then to grow with that market and be able to modify and keep adding the facilities that the market was demanding. And we're certainly the resort I'm working on now. That's our plan. We'll be opening as a snow play and a real beginner area this year. So we're literally digging a hole in the ground now, and we've got 3 months to get ready. But when the first runs go in, we'll be catering more for the beginner intermediates.
So is
Go on.
sorry, go on.
No, no, you're right. I was waiting for
So
your question.
as a developing, I know, technology, right? As a kind of developing industry, then I assume there's quite a few people like yourselves that are coming in from outside to inject that knowledge in order to be able to make that growth happen a bit quicker. I mean, there's a certain amount of learning you can do as you go, but I'm assuming that there's a lot of external input that's coming along into China to assist with that.
There certainly is. You've got your major resort planners from North America and from Europe in place there, and they're now involved in the planning process. And we're seeing some very large resorts coming up. And I just got someone at the door. Turn on the webinar. Sorry, it just says I want to walk in on this. We've got some major, as I said, the major players. And we've also got a large number of consultants moving into the place. You've got your good ones and your bad ones. People see it. It's like all development in China at the moment. A lot of people are seeing advantages there and jumping in quickly. And we've seen that with a number of the resorts where the poor planning was not as a result of the Chinese. It was that they accepted the decisions made by foreigners and they put in place something that was inappropriate for the market at the time. Hence the cost now of redesigning and rebuilding them. And a number of the bigger, older ones are going through this right now. We've seen it in equipment sales and a whole range of things that are going on in China. Some of the people have taken advantage of the past, but the Chinese are quite savvy to that at this stage and will continue to develop and grow as they get a better understanding of what's going on. But yes, you are right. There's a lot of them there. Not a lot staying around and running resorts. We're seeing that starting to happen. I certainly, from what I understand, when I'm told I was the longest serving foreigner in running a resort. We had it with Yabali, we had that when when Interwest owned that, they brought people over and they were there for sure. Dolomiti's got Italians there now, and certainly the GM of that who's come in, he's been there in the past in other locations. So we're seeing them taking on more foreigners to get that experience. But at the same time, they're wanting to get their own people overseas to gain the experience. And that's been difficult because of the language. Even here in Australia, we do have some of the Chinese now in resorts here, but of course of our visa requirements on the language, it makes it very difficult for them. So we have a lot of the Chinese staff undergoing intensive training in English at the moment, so they can get through the various visa requirements. But I'm hoping in the next few years with the Olympics coming up, there may be some relaxing of those rules to allow us to bring those people in to gain greater experience. In here, Canada for sure, definitely in the US, and we want to get them all around the world as much as possible.
Yeah, gotcha. So, I mean, given that outside influence, I mean, I would assume that the kind of lift systems and lots of the technology and stuff that's being used in these resorts is also coming, externally. So, Doppelmayr and Pommer for lifts, for example.
Oh, definitely. We were a Doppelmayr resort at the time. We had the latest, the Chondola, the gondola 6-seater chair. So fully heated cabins, fully heated chairs with bubbles, 4-seater and 6-seater gondola chairs, heated seats, bubbles. They were quite different to what a number of other resorts have put in. The Chinese do make lifts. Pommer is definitely there. I know that our neighbour Dolomiti, it had the Pommer lifts in, and they're being more competitive in that market. But the Chinese, as I said, would make their own lifts, and a lot of those resorts had put in Chinese lifts to start with. And for those here in Australia, it's sort of you're looking at riding the Perisher double chair, for example, or the old Cannonball chair and Threadbow. And these are fine, they work. They meet their purpose, but China is very cold as well for a few of those months, and so you need to try and create an environment for the guests that's enjoyable. And if you're going to sit on a long, slow chair, for those who remember Red Mountain many years ago, by the time you got to the top of Red Mountain in British Columbia, you were frozen because it was a long, slow double chair. So you need to speed up that process and give them greater comfort. And we're starting to see that now as the newer resorts are putting in, let's say, more modern chairs, but the Chinese at the same time have advanced their development, and they've got their first gondola went in last year, in a ski resort. They'd built them before, the first one. And that was in Wanlong, which is in the same area, which is about to undergo a major expansion and almost triple in size in the number of ski runs. And that's right next door to Secret Garden. It's all part of this Olympic venue area. And it will put in a number of newer Chinese chairs. They built their first grooming machine last year. I've yet to see it in operation, but certainly it's the standard machines that we see, I've got names of them, metal block. The same machines we see in all our resorts around the world. So European equipment, ski equipment, again, they do make their own, but most of the resorts are running the same type of skis and snowboards that we see. Burton's playing there in a big time, putting equipment in, putting its riglet parks around, trying to develop snowboarding. So in a lot of ways, you can walk into these resorts and they're very much what you'll see in the resorts in any country in the world. When you look closer, you start to see the differences.
Right, understood. So, given this kind of growth, let's talk a little bit about safety and ski patrol. That's clearly developing as well, and again, I assume that there's some outside influence that's being injected to help those patrol systems and safety systems come together.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was probably the last thing on their mind when they were putting in resorts. And one of the things when I was asked to look at Secret Garden was he said, I want the place to run and operate as if I could pick the whole thing up and place it in a country like Canada, or place it in Australia or New Zealand, and it would meet their requirements from a safety and legal aspect. The owner saw where China was moving, and it's going to go through the same evolution we have in our countries as far as the safety requirements, litigation, and everything else. And what we did was start to look at what was needed. The first thing I did was to look what was already in existence in China, and there wasn't much in the sense of ski patrol. Yes, they had ski patrol on the mountain, but they were just local boys whose job was really just to put up some fences, safety fences. And they have a lot more fences than we have here. They're literally you get most of the resorts, the courses, the runs are like race courses in the sense they've got their bee netting lining most of them. They're very conscious about running off the slopes. Remember, it's man-made, so that's the best snow sitting right there. And if you get off-piste, unless it's a good year, you're going to be in some difficulty. So ski patrol set up the fences, set up very little signage, very little safety signage. There was a version of the Alpine Responsibility Code in a few resorts. It didn't exist in most. And the training of patrollers was extremely basic first aid, extremely basic. And the amount of equipment they had, some had imported, especially the earlier ones and the ones Interwest was involved in, for example, similar equipment as in Akias and Cascades, but others were using a Chinese version, which is actually quite good. I was very impressed with it. But the training was lacking. So that was the thing we started to look at how we could put in a system. And I started from scratch really with my guys and took them back to the basics and worked them through and started buying equipment and training them with that appropriate equipment as we went on. And other resorts started to watch that and sort of copy it. And it will continue because it's an area that they hadn't spent a lot of effort on.
So that would kind of imply then that there's not a national system in place yet, like you would have with the NSP, for example, or the CSP in Canada.
Exactly. And what I did was look at those systems and basically, okay, what can we take? How can we copy them? What can we put in place? Invited patrollers from other countries over to assist in the training, and trying to encourage them to come up with a national system. It doesn't have a national system. They have a Chinese Ski Association, the governing body, that really only looks at alpine skiing. They just started the National Snowboard body, and that's been started by a European, an Austrian, who is married to a Chinese snowboarder, one of the first international snowboarders. And the instructing system runs under this PSA itself, so again, it's not internationally recognised, and Ski Patrol had nothing. So yes, there was a need for somehow pulling it together, and our goal at Secret Garden was to create a system that others could look at and say, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to take what they've got and emulate it across the other resorts. And that's certainly, it's ongoing, that one, because again, they didn't see it as a major priority of King's expenditure.
Yeah, and obviously there's 7 years until the Winter Olympics, and so there's plenty of time to kind of get some of those things rectified, and therefore I guess that will rectify itself, as it were. Like you say, it's an ongoing process, but that's surely going to have an impact on return rates and so forth if people are having an injury and needing to be treated and cared for. So do they have medical facilities in resorts? Or is it like a ski patrol based facility for some treatment while they await transport?
It varies from resort to resort, but on the whole, it reminded me very much of when I was working in Canada in the early 90s, is that we didn't have on-site doctors in some of the resorts I was in. You had that base facility that was well equipped. It was really a holding station to the ambulance could take you off to hospital. And we at Secret Garden, we employed a doctor. So we had a doctor and a nurse, and we employed the doctor. The nurse was supplied by the local hospital, and it was on a rotational basis. And that was different to a number of the other resorts, but again, that changed in my second year there because the other resorts had put in doctors as well. So they were seeing the need to improve what they were doing. So it was very quickly. It's one thing that happens in China. Things do happen quickly. So once they see an advancement, they see an innovation that should be copied, they'll do that. And we started to see that move across a number of the other resorts, especially in my area, which we had quite a few resorts, of course, and 2 more to open this year in the same area, and it's the area where the Olympics is, and they all butt onto one another. So safety will become a greater concern, certainly from the resort owner, and he was not Chinese, he was actually Malaysian, or it was a combination of owners, but the major family was Malaysian, but he'd skied around the world and he'd seen what was required. The Chinese, yes, the safety is a major factor, especially for the children. So the safer you can make it, the more chance you've got of them coming back. But that's all part of the experience in any sport you do. You want to know that, yes, I'm going to have a great time. I'm going to be thrilled and excited, and I'm going to push myself to that edge. But should I go over that edge, I'd like to know that there's someone there to look after me. And the Chinese are no different to anywhere else in that. And it was interesting how quickly the ski patrol took on what they were being taught. They really wanted to learn more, and they really wanted to offer that service if required. But we'll see that happen. And you're right, the Olympics will force them to. There'll be no holding back now. There'll be an absolute requirement. But the Chinese, the government itself is enforcing safety rules and regulations all over the country and trying to catch up with what's happening in the rest of the world.
So we have a question here from Jay. Is there any innovation that you're seeing in China that you're not seeing kind of elsewhere, or that's not being influenced from elsewhere? Is there anything the Chinese are doing particularly differently?
In the sense of safety, they're doing it differently, as I said, with the way they line the majority of their courses with netting, and we're talking at race netting. But there are, at the same time, there were things that they didn't pad the snow gun outlets, the faucets, and so we changed that. So, well, on the one hand, they'd emulated certain things, they hadn't copied others. There's nothing that I would say the Chinese are doing differently in snow sports. And it's very new for them, and they're catching up with what's been done in the West, I would say, and in terms of safety. Some of the newer ones are definitely close, but they've just got more work to do in the training, in equipment and so forth. No, not yet. They're not being, the new ones have realized they can't be a Western resort in China. What they have to do is take the best of the Western resorts and make a Chinese resort out of them. And so we're starting to see some, where even in food and beverage, some of them were trying to serve purely Western food to start with, because that's what you go to a Western resort, and there's a particular type of food in nearly every North American resort you go to. It's the same. Australian resorts the same. And depending where the owners had been, they wanted that. The market wasn't accommodating, so they modified it. Ski rental. One thing I will say is they certainly they build things bigger than what we see in the West. So the rental halls are bigger. The ticketing areas are larger. The parking areas are larger. Everything seems to be on a much grander scale, and that was certainly Secret Garden. There was an amazing amount of room, and for the future expansions, from the numbers we had to where we're going, we'd see that. But no, from a safety point of view, no, not yet. Nothing new or innovative. Other than, I did mention the Chinese Accia, or Chinese sled. I liked it. It was a combination of a Cascade and an Accia. It had an interesting braking system on it. It was modifiable in a number of ways to accommodate the patient, to make them more comfortable. And there are certainly things on it I didn't like, which we had to amend. That the patient could be transported in a way that was inappropriate for the injury as well. So I had to do a little modification when I got there.
And we have another question here as well. Do they have a volunteer paid patroller system in China in the same way that we might have in Australia or in Canada, for example?
No. Volunteering in China is not a big thing. We will see volunteers to a degree at Olympic Games, major sporting events. It's certainly growing, but I had this discussion at length with them, and it's something which we believed will grow because we're looking at volunteer hosts and things like that, some way of encouraging the local population to be more involved in the activities up there. And now with the Olympics, that will certainly continue to grow. But at this stage, the patrol is purely a paid patrol, and we'll have to see where that goes. So certainly, I was trying to encourage it. There were a number of local skiers who were good skiers, and they were interested, but they didn't want to do it as a full-time thing. They just were saying they wanted to give back. As they said, they felt that they could help the industry grow, and was there something they could do? And that was one area we're looking at. But firstly, we put them on as mountain hosts and had a volunteer mountain host system. So that's the beginning of the volunteer system there. So
all right, good. That was a good question there from Jay. Thank you. Next one, Adam. Adam says he's a Chinese-speaking ski and snowboard instructor from the UK. Hi, Adam. How do you see the Chinese instruction systems progressing? Do you see the CSA doing their own thing, or do you think China will import one of the foreign systems currently being taught?
Individual resorts are looking at it in different ways at the moment. I encouraged some of the members of the CSA who I met with to look at what was happening overseas, and that they should join the international body and sort of have standards similar that would allow the Chinese instructors to gain an accreditation to work anywhere in the world. At the moment, the CSA qualification isn't recognised. A number of the resorts are looking around. We have 2 of them in Australia at the moment, and they're looking at both the New Zealand and the Australian system, and they will be, if it all goes according to the way they've told me, well, they'll be having those people go over and start running clinics and so forth and trying to give a qualification like an APSI or New Zealand one, which will then give that level of qualification, allow those people to work in any of the countries that recognise them. Certainly the Swiss, the Austrians are there. I'm in discussion with the Germans at the moment with this new resort, which is south of Beijing, and they may be involved in the actual running of the ski school in its first year, and we're setting up their accreditation system there and utilising theirs. And Larks, the Swiss resort, is heavily involved as well, and doing this thing, trying to give a Swiss qualification. So we're seeing the foreigners come in to provide that next level of education, that next level of training, and that level of service that we see in the Western ski schools, which was lacking in the Chinese ski schools. So I would like to, Chinese are a proud people, and I would like to see that they adopt, similar to what I said earlier, the best of the best, and come up with a system that is internationally recognised. And I believe they'll do that. But in the meantime, we'll see the foreign ski schools, foreign ski systems, foreign snowboard systems, getting involved there because they're already in place, and these resorts are hungry to get moving and to have a system that they can promote and encourage people to visit their particular resorts. I hope that answers his question. It's a real hard. It could go either way.
Yes, absolutely. It sounds like there's going to be some some kind of wrestling going on and some juggling of various bits and pieces from all over the place.
Definitely, and it goes back to what I said earlier on language. Yeah, a problem with, and I spoke to a number of the myself, and I was there with Secret Garden trying to get training from overseas, and they weren't prepared to offer any accreditation unless the exam was done in their particular language. It had to be done in English or it had to be done in German, and that was difficult because a lot of the instructors aren't capable of that. Then we had a few of them said, okay, what we'll do if you can help us, we'll translate everything. And that's where it's starting to open up to these countries that are willing to be a bit more flexible and see advantages for themselves of getting involved in China and offering their system. And so it's an understanding that not every Chinese language is difficult for us, but English is not an easy language either. And there needs to be that understanding from the foreign countries to be a bit more flexible, a bit more adaptable, and then they'll get a greater involvement in China.
And adopting, like you say, the cultural barriers and getting over those as well probably takes some understanding, as well as getting the just the communication over too.
Yeah, the Chinese don't want to have an American resort planted on them. They want a Chinese resort with the best of the American resorts. They're the best of the German resorts and best of the Australians, and they want to have those great facilities, but they just don't want to have that imposed upon them because they do things and they have different likes than what we have.
So one last question before we wrap up. Again from Adam, so thank you, Adam. Why do you think the Olympics went to the Yangqing cluster of resorts rather than the established northeastern resorts such as Changshan and Yabuli and so forth?
That was part of it. China wants to be the first country to actually hold a summer and winter Olympics in the one location. So actually it's in Beijing. And that's the bid for the games. It's the Beijing Zhangjiakou bid. The ice sports and many of the sports will actually be held in the Summer Olympic facilities. We held events in the birdcage, winter events. We had the World Cup aerials. We had big air events. We had some rail jams, quite large, where some of the world's best came to China to compete. So they'll reuse those facilities. And the snow sports, by pushing them up into that area, it's part of the government move to create a recreation sports zone that accommodates the wider, larger Beijing area. Yeah, you've got Beijing itself of 23 odd million, but in the wider Beijing maybe 27. But when you go out into the cities that's around it, you're getting larger numbers. And I just read recently they're going to allow Beijing to grow to over 100 million, and that will absorb this current area that we're talking about. So then we have a major sport recreation green zone as part of the Beijing cluster. The others are further away from Beijing, so it just goes down to that requirement of what's it going to cost when you put in the bobsleds, the ski jumps, the ice skating facilities. It all adds to the cost. So Beijing is saying we can keep it down by reusing old facilities, and that meets the IOC requirements that they're trying to bring the cost of these events down. It also was developing an area that was an underdeveloped and very poor area, and so it's giving greater opportunities to local populations and jobs and futures for them. So again, it's part of that legacy involvement. When the Olympics are over, there's going to be a lot happening in this particular area. Transport is easy, so you can be into Beijing. The very fast train will be there next year, it should be. So you're on a 50-minute ride from Beijing, you're there. Then you get into the bus and you can attend a number of resorts. It really goes down. It was Beijing's bid. It wasn't Yabuli's bid or Beidahu's bid or anything else. It was a Beijing bid for the Olympics, and they didn't want to put athletes on the plane from Beijing after they've done, well, the reporters and the media. And look, the last year, Torino, one of the greatest complaints was from the media about they couldn't get to events. Vancouver, as good as it was, the media had trouble, even on that new highway, getting between events. So if you're going to go put something 500, 600, or more than that, almost 1,000 kilometres away, it's going to make it even more difficult. But yeah, I'll go back, it was a Beijing bid. That was what they went for. They could have easily gone for another location, but this will give an area a number of great facilities. It'll help showcase Beijing, which is improving weekly, cleaning their act up greatly. in my time there, I've seen the city just clean itself up. It's still got a long way to go. Its people seemed were supportive from those I read, so they had a lot of strong support to do it again. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for picking Beijing, but it was the case that they could have, they might have decided to do it in Shanghai. But it was just that's where they wanted to put their bid.
There you go. Cool. All right. Well, look, I think I can speak for everyone. This has been fascinating, actually, to learn a little bit about, China and certainly the development of the ski economy over there, and a little bit about the ski patrol, and obviously about Beijing in 2022. And I think it would be very interesting to have this conversation again, perhaps in a couple of years' time, and see how that progress is going and moving, that trajectory and how everything's changing on the way to the Olympics.
It certainly will. It's even since the announcement. I think we've been about 2 weeks discussing some WeChats with some of my ex-staff in Chongli, and they're showing me the pictures of the development. It's already taken off massively. So they're working towards it. We see a little farming village. It's now into a major 40 to 50,000 bed city, I suppose, and continuing to grow to service the needs of what's coming up.
Yeah. So Gary, if someone wants to get in touch with you, use your services, or perhaps even ask some more questions, how would they go about doing that?
Just email me is probably the best way, or if they're on WeChat, they can find me. If they're in China, but email me on it's at the bottom of the screen, is it? Blue Ridge?
We'll make sure we get that up on the blog article as well, so we'll get some contact details for you.
Yeah, just put my email address up here, and that's probably the best way. Because wherever I am in the world at the time, I'm always checking emails.
Everyone's ultimately always connected nowadays. All right, well, Gary, look, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And from us at Medic 52, we'll sign off here. Don't forget that the the World Ski Patroller survey is now available as well, medic52.com/survey. And thank you very much, Gary.
You're welcome. I suppose we should do a plug for Medic 52 in the sense that we do have a almost Chinese version of it. I did translate that for Duncan while I was over in China, and it was one thing. It's not yet implemented, but there's strong interest in getting that started in a couple of the larger resorts. And in my new one, we will be using it. So
excellent. On its way. All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Gary, and everyone have a good day and ski safe.